The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. That's right. Excuse me. It is Monday, April 15th, and today is National Laundry Day. It's also National Purple Up. You know what I mean? That royal color. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. National Glazed Spiral Ham Day. National Titanic Remembrance Day. National Rubber Eraser Day. And since it's also tax day, it's also fitting that it is National Take a Wild Guess Day. What do you think about that, Rico?
I never guess. Everything's calculated.
Oh, I bet. Well, thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above on your screen to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. But kicking it off first, we have the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte, the baby-changing software running man. That's right. It is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
Yay.
Yeah, you're gonna be out.
We don't get the applause today.
Adam's in New York for the next 2 weeks, so you're not gonna get any applause for 2 weeks, bro. You're on the NC list. Yeah.
Okay.
Go on. Let's go.
So TDR's Bill McNarland reported on last Friday's Political article about bipartisan discussions in Congress considering merging legislation on cryptocurrency regulation with safe banking. Just in time for Glazed Ham Day, Jason. We got some important bills coming through.
Love it.
Cannabis and crypto. Feels like we're back in 2020.
Yes.
For those not up to speed, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has been actively talking with key members of the House Financial Services Committee of combining SAFE with crypto reform as a way to handle the complexities of the legislative process and address the growing connections between cannabis and crypto in the regulatory world. Sounds a lot more complicated than it needs to be, but keep on going. Something to that effect. The proposed legislative package may be attached to a critical FAA reauthorization bill, which needs to be tapped. Public support for the cannabis banking reform right now is strong, and with significant bipartisan backing from top Representative Nancy Mace, arguing that passing safe banking will somehow block Democrats from retaking control of the House. Maybe? McNarland believes that this merging of cannabis and crypto legislation represents a strategic alignment of policy initiatives that could significantly impact both industries, and by tackling the banking challenges faced by the cannabis sector through the broader scope of cryptocurrency regulation, lawmakers are proposing a forward-looking framework that could pave the way for more integrated and efficient regulatory approaches in the future. Well, here's what I believe. I've always been a proponent of crypto and cannabis, and I even pushed for a lot of the solutions that we, face in cannabis to be fixed using blockchain. A lot has changed over the last 4 years. So 4 years ago today, the world was in a totally different place. 6 months before yet another most important election of our lifetime, and we were over a month into COVID-19 pandemic. My little pandemic princess, Zora, had just turned a week old, and the whole world was on lockdown as fingers were pointed globally over who was really to blame. Poor communication, lack of transparency from government led to a spike in conspiracy theories and speculative conversations being had between folks who never talked to each other in the real world. Fist fights over toilet paper. Remember that shit, Jason?
Yeah, it was awesome.
The world was in a different place. It was chaos. But chaos breeds opportunity. In two places many at the time believed endless upside, endless opportunity would be for the foreseeable future, cannabis and crypto. Both lanes were down bad over the last couple of years and poised to break out. Weed business became essential business in many states, giving dispensaries and delivery services the ability to operate when most others remained shut down. With everybody suddenly at home, digital payments were on the rise and unregulated crypto ads were everywhere. Wouldn't be long before Tom Brady, Larry David, Jake Paul, Taylor Swift, even the president of the United States were all hawking a bunch of shitcoin tokens, NFTs, crypto-based investments that you had the privilege of clout chasing your way into debt over. What a time to be alive. We all know both Icarus Industries flew too close to the sun before, massive dives back down to reality, but both are once again top topics of discussion in the investment world. And this time it ain't Elon Musk or Lil Yachty pitching. It's the biggest mutual funds and investment managers in the world. So maybe we are at that tipping point, and maybe we will get to see this bacon stuff bill signed into law, and all of a sudden we'll have the privilege of buying legal weed with Dogecoin, and everything will be just fine. But I don't know. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News, and I hope you guys can hear this shit right here.
What is the only cryptocurrency that you should invest? It's the people's currency, you know it's the best. The most fun and ironic crypto, that is for sure. We're taking Dogecoin to the moon. And if a broker says, listen, you can't get rich with Dogecoin.
All right.
To the moon.
Yes. Cute, Rico. Very cute.
Is crypto going to save cannabis banking?
Well, you know what? I actually had a whole conversation about this over the weekend, and to my understanding, this is how safe banking is going to get across the finish line with it being coupled with the crypto banking, and it's going to go pretty quick. Like it's going to go before scheduling, to my understanding.
Good.
No, it's going to. It's going to. That's what I'm hearing.
You said the same thing about safe banking multiple times before, Jason. Just saying.
Yeah, but Rico, he had a whole conversation, not a half conversation, not a quarter conversation. He had a whole conversation over the weekend.
It was a long conversation.
What could happen? Yeah, plenty.
It was just another Ponzi scheme, man. It's like I just hope for the human race that somehow we grow up and emotionally mature and start to realize like everybody can't get more than they put in and have the thing still work. The system doesn't work that way. You really need to aim at something that is more like a circle where people put in and get out an equitable amount. But it's thought that everybody can get more from investing. It's really a Ponzi scheme. And if we look at Earth and we try to do this with all of our resources, eventually we just mine them all up and we're
mine them all up.
You know, I was into Bitcoin when you could use it on the Pirate Bay and you could use it to buy drugs, honestly, on the dark web. Once people try to really posit it as a currency, it's not. It's a speculative instrument. It's like betting, and the whole thing just doesn't make any sense. And it's really just pushed forward by people's greed and short-sightedness.
Well, from what I hear, the next big influx of cash coming into the cannabis market is going to be cryptocurrency, and that's why this whole bill is getting tied together with one another.
You heard that in a full conversation or a half conversation?
That was just a quarter of the conversation.
That was a full combo. Combo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to do. First of all, we need to do one thing, which is I think we need to separate the conversation around cryptocurrency from blockchain technology. I think blockchain technology is very exciting. I think cryptocurrency at some point is going to go to zero, and there's going to be some "I told you so"s. Just because I don't understand where the intrinsic value actually lies. And I think it's still great for headlines. Does this galvanize more support for safe banking from other constituents outside of cannabis? Yes, but safe banking has been legislative blue balls. It has been something that has been stood up as maybe providing a happy ending for the last couple years and has never gotten past the foreplay stage. Mm-hmm. And so every time people get really excited about it, I don't really understand why. The other thing that I think is really important to understand is that safe banking isn't a necessary law that needs to be passed in order for the banking industry to more aggressively and more cheaply bank the cannabis industry. That doesn't need to happen. We don't need any action on the legislative branch, and we could do it all from the executive branch, and we could reduce the requirements for suspicious reporting activity, lowering the cost to cannabis banking entities, and all of that could happen without this being passed. And so, yeah, I mean, I haven't had any partial conversations about this weekend, but I would just stand on the other side of this and bet you a bong hit that it's not going to go anywhere.
I would bet a bong hit. That's a fair bet. That's a solid bet right there, Yarrow. I'm telling you, it's going to go. It's going to, it's going to be before the summer. From what I'm hearing.
Think of this, man. So like 4 years ago today, Bitcoin was under 6,000.
Mm-hmm. What's it at, like 50,000 now?
It would go into the stratosphere and then back down to like, the low teens, and now it's back. Right. There's a lot of volatility already in an election year, and just to add it again with all the shit that we're dealing with this go round from hell. Well, like, I would not touch any of this stuff. So if you're betting on stuff, man, you bet something small like a bong rip or something like that, like anything could happen. And I would not bet on any of this either going through or passing the way that they're framing it right now. Well, even if Jason Beck said it's a sure deal.
It's a sure deal. Like, sure thing. So here's the real question. Here's the real question, because I'm trying to figure this part out. How many cannabis companies, because these crypto bros want to invest their cryptocurrency into the cannabis industry, how many cannabis companies are going to accept cryptocurrency as a form of investment for their cannabis company? That's
all of them, because any cannabis company that is seeking capital is going to take it in crypto. They'll take it in a 55-gallon burlap sack of nickels if that's what it takes.
Any way they can get it.
All right, fair enough, you guys.
Hell yeah! Especially if it's given the green light, the powers that be, like why would you not immediately?
All right, well, seeing you guys' thoughts on that, we're gonna roll to a commercial, and we're gonna be right back.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California, with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
Oh, boy.
Y'all know who he is. He is the highest Republican in every single room that he walks into. The high at 9 head honcho, but also knows who and what you should be buying on the stock market at all times. And right now it should be lots of Doge.
Yes.
Y'all know who it is. Beck.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Rico. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Happy Monday, you guys. It is the most important day of the week. And Oh, man. You know, Rico, I told you on Friday that New York is the gift that keeps on giving, and I got more in New York for you. Because apparently they're saying don't flood the market with legal pot shops. New York cannabis industry warns you guys. Oh, man. A group representing the legal marijuana industry is warning Governor Hochul's cannabis regulators that a dramatic increase in the number of pot stores could have disastrous consequences for current licensed operators. Cannabis Association of New York President Damian Cornwell noted that the state regulators have yet to weed out the hordes of illegal pot operators. In quotes, "We are waiting to express our deep concern regarding the Cannabis Control Board's recent decisions about dramatically increasing the number of cannabis licenses in the state." Cornwell, founder of the Just Breathe cannabis shop in Birmingham, said in an April 12th letter to the said in a letter sent to the State Cannabis Control Board Chairwoman Germain Wright and members of the Cannabis Advisory Board, in quotes, "We believe that this approach, if implemented without proper analysis and stakeholder input, will have disastrous consequences for the flooding industry and public health." Hochul and state regulators have been criticized for a slow roll and rocky rollout since the first licensed pot store opened back in December of 2022, and lawsuits contributed to delays in licensing and store openings last year, leaving farmers in the lurk with mounds of spoiled marijuana crops. But state officials have ramped up the issuance of licenses and approved openings of dispensaries since litigation was settled last fall. There are now 103 legal cannabis stores open throughout the Empire State, up from 26 last November, and more than 400 cannabis licenses ranging from growers to retail stores have been issued by state regulators this year, including 101 at the April 11th Cannabis Control Board meeting. But Cornwell advised prudent deliberation instead of reckless overwhelming the budding market, and in quote says, "We strongly believe that handing out licenses without a thorough understanding of the market's capacity will lead to an oversaturation, business failures, and unintended public health risks," he said. As the cannabis industry in New York is still in its early stages, many licensed retailers are already facing challenges competing with the illegal market. Flooding the market with additional licenses exacerbates this problem and potentially leads to a wave of closures, undermining the state's social equity goals and leaving vulnerable entrepreneurs in an unsustainable market, they say. To emphasize his point, Cornwell put a paragraph of his letter in bold, calling on the Cannabis Advisory Board to conduct a sweeping market analysis and a review with stakeholders prior to making any major policy decisions impacting the industry. In a subsequent interview with the Post, Cornwell said the legal cannabis industry cannot be compared to other retail markets, and unlike other industries, licensed pot stores are barred from deducting ordinary business expenses for income tax purposes because it's still considered an illicit drug under federal law. And in quotes, "Without the ability to deduct expenses like rent, employee wages, and marketing costs and other operating expenses, cannabis retail stores face a higher tax burden compared to other retail businesses. This can significantly impact their profitability and financial viability," he said. Well, he's right about that. New York does have crazy, crazy high rent, and the fact that you can't write it off is just crazy to me. But nonetheless, these guys are calling and saying, hey, don't issue out more licenses because there's enough of us. And until you're going to crack down on the stores, don't do anything. What do you guys have to say about this?
I got to jump in first. I got a burning desire. This guy's a fucking cornhole, not a corn wall. He is literally a hole in a piece of wood that a beanbag should be thrown through. I mean, this notion that he's going to come in with that protectionistic angle and then try to anchor it to the already known things around 280E restrictions or the fact that this isn't like any other retail business. He's using examples of known data to support protectionism because his store is open. I mean, this is the biggest FU. And then writing to them and putting a paragraph in bold, right on, brah. I know how to use Microsoft Word too. Thank you very much. Who are you? What makes you qualified? Why Why should I even listen to you? You got your store open, and now you're worried because you got 100 retail stores in that whole state, and you're going to speak for the industry. You're not speaking for the industry. You're speaking for retailers. You're not speaking for cultivators. You think any cultivator only wants 100 shops in the entire state of New York? Shame on this guy. Honestly, I don't know him from Adam, but this is the worst approach. And I don't know that this gentleman has the CV to have an opinion that matters. Straight up.
Interesting.
He's the head of Cannabis New York, the CA New York Industry Organization.
Yeah, he's the industry association, bro. He speaks for the industry.
His rhetoric, man, is scared. He sounds scared of competition.
I'm with Rico and Yarrow on this. It makes ever going to shut down all of these illicit shops that have customers that are doing tons of business and not opening other stores and giving an option.
And this whole notion that we have to be thoughtful. Yeah, no shit. This is public policy, you numbnut. We've been thinking about this for longer than you probably. I got roaches in my ashtray that are probably older than you, or at least more evolved in their thinking.
Is that 'cause
this
you don't take out
notion
the
that we
trash?
need to be thoughtful about this? We've been very thoughtful about this. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that didn't just show up yesterday. New York's rules and regulations didn't show up yesterday. They've been doing their bestest on a rollout for years now, and this hodgepodge of supporting data that doesn't support his assertion, it's economic protectionism. And frankly, it flies in the face of a decent version of capitalism and the opportunity for other people to put their oar in the water and row their merry little happy rowboats to economic prosperity. And then to even loop in the social equity part of it, bro, kick rocks.
Actually, I'd like to just provide a counterpoint. Using government protectionism to create monopolies is actually capitalism. I think what you mean, Yarrow, is free market. Free market is where anyone has a chance to open a business, provide a service, and then be remunerated for it. Capitalism is where capital is into the fewest pockets as possible, and where government and industry leaders collude to keep other people out of the market. So this would be textbook capitalism, this letter and this gentleman's position.
And what St. Germain just said is why he and I are the ebony and ivory on the keyboard of commentary. Because
you hear what he's trying to do there?
I do not disagree with what he just said.
Hold on. Who's ebony here?
That would be me, Rico.
Oh boy.
I'm ebony light.
All this white on white crime.
Oh boy.
The albino piano that only Paul McCartney can do justice.
Cute.
The white keys and the off-white keys.
Rico, you want to introduce Yarrow, since you're going to be leaving us in a second?
And up next, you have the ivory keys on the ivory piano. Also, Sebastopol Sage coming to the stage. Y'all know who it is. It's the #1 dope dad when it comes to Northern California, and fucking boss is.
No, he lost it.
Yarrow Kubrin.
Yeah.
And the crowd goes wild like the Stadium of Rome.
Oh boy.
Hold on, I got it.
It's not a stadium; it's a coliseum, Yarrow.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. No, we don't hear any of that, Rico. We're not getting none of that. No, we're not getting none of that, bro. No.
I heard it.
Hey, I'll take the intro. Good enough on a Monday morning. Good morning, High at 9 News viewers. Monday, April 15th, tax day. Thank you for joining us here on whatever channel you're tuning in on. My article today is from a website called The Conversation, Academic Rigor with Journalistic Flair. This is written by a PhD in economics, Bo-Young Seo. And this article is about taxes, so I love covering this sort of stuff. Marijuana tax revenue falls short of projections in many states, including Colorado. This was published this morning at 8:28 a.m. Eastern. Nearly half of Americans live in a state that allows legal access to recreational marijuana. 11 more states, including Wisconsin and Florida, are considering adult use legalization in 2024. One of the most common rationales for legalizing marijuana is increasing state tax revenue. How much revenue comes in depends on decisions states make about regulating the marijuana industry, including how it is taxed. The author of this article is an economist who specializes in forecasting how various tax regimens affect markets. Their experience spans industries such as legal recreational marijuana, alcohol, and tobacco. They've examined various taxes on marijuana in states such as Colorado and Washington to understand how much revenue has been brought in and the role state tax policies have played in that outcome. Marijuana is taxed similar to alcohol and tobacco. Recreational marijuana taxes are generally based on price, quantity, weight, or potency, much like other sin goods such as tobacco and alcohol products. Taxing sin goods is thought to shape public health policy and reduce the harmful impacts these products have on the public. These taxes, also known as excise taxes, are usually higher on sin goods than taxes on other products by design. Taxing these goods aggressively is more than about government greed. Bullshit! It is well understood that alcohol and tobacco use creates burdens on society, such as increased violence and healthcare costs. Economists like the author call these impacts on people who are uninvolved in a situation negative social externalities. Studies have shown that marijuana can have adverse health risks too, especially in adolescents. So governments often structure taxes on marijuana to try to limit its consumption. Most states with legal marijuana impose a marijuana sales tax. Others use a combination of sales taxes and quantity or weight-based tax. For instance, a half a dozen marijuana brownies that weigh a pound could be taxed as 6 or taxed on their weight. Taxes based on potency, a common practice for liquor taxation in most states, is also designed to reduce consumption. Taxes on spirits are generally much higher than the taxes on wine or beer. Marijuana potency can be taxed on the product's level of THC, the main psychoactive compound in cannabis. Why state tax revenue fell so short? In 2012, Colorado and Washington became the first 2 states to legalize recreational marijuana, and sales began in 2014. These states tax marijuana aggressively compared to other states. For instance, Colorado imposes a 15% sales tax paid by consumers and another 15% on weight paid by retailers, which means it's paid by consumers, compared with New Mexico, which only has a 12% sales tax. Washington's tax is even higher at 37%. With taxes set high, Washington and Colorado expected their new marijuana industries to generate significant tax revenue. These predictions relied on surveys of illegal marijuana use and likely overestimated the consumption of legal marijuana, which tends to be more expensive than street drugs. In 2012, then Governor John Hickenlooper predicted Colorado would collect more than $130 million in revenue from marijuana tax in the fiscal year of sales. The actual tax receipts was about $88 million. Washington experienced a similar shortfall. The State Office of Financial Management projected it would earn $434 million in taxes in fiscal year 2025, more than twice the realized revenue. What's more, both states' tax revenue from alcohol and tobacco were undercut by marijuana. I'm going to repeat that again for the viewer. What's more, both states' tax revenue from alcohol and tobacco were undercut by marijuana. Research that this author published with economist Keaton Miller found that people were consuming marijuana instead of alcohol and tobacco, causing revenue from those other sin goods to drop. You're welcome. In Washington, our research estimated that 40%, or $56 million, was siphoned off liquor, wine, and cigarette tax revenue from July 2014 to June of 2015. Both states did earn more taxes overall than before legalization, but the total increase is not as large as politicians predicted. On top of not collecting the expected tax revenue, states such as California, Oregon, and Colorado have experienced a slowdown or even a decrease in marijuana sales and tax revenue. One reason is because as these markets mature, the average price for marijuana is dropping. Lower prices are leading to decreases in sales tax revenue. For instance, marijuana prices in Colorado dropped 60% from 2014 to 2023. Colorado has been losing tax revenue ever since, and Washington's case is not much different. Taxing THC potency as the solution. One tax regimen that seems safe from falling prices as long as the same amount of marijuana is sold is a potency-based tax, which taxes marijuana based on its THC content. To date, just 3 states, New York, Illinois, and Connecticut, tax THC potency. New York taxes marijuana flower at about 5 cents per milligram, concentrates at 8 cents per milligram of THC, and edibles at about 3 cents per milligram. That's in addition to the 9% state tax and 4% local tax. Are potency-based taxes a way to create a more stable stream of tax receipts? The answer is no. Potency-based tax will be effective only if consumers have a strict preference for higher potency products and resist switching to lower potency ones to avoid taxes. But research that the author conducted with Keaton Miller, Benjamin Hansen, and Carolyn Weber found that the consumer didn't care much about marijuana potency. Our research also found that growers and processors can easily reduce the THC potency of their products without incurring too much cost. They do so by shortening the grow time, changing the product mix, or providing low potency products as testing samples. That would be called rigging your results, right? Okay. As a result, potency taxes could have the unintended consequence of encouraging suppliers to sell products with low THC because they likely would still earn similar profits. So, is there one ideal tax structure that can generate a robust stream of marijuana tax revenue? Not really. Tax policies do influence the market, but they can do little to overcome soft demand. From that perspective, a decline or stagnation in state tax revenue from marijuana is inevitable. As the market matures and more states legalize marijuana, consumers will have more buying options and competition will intensify. That means the price of marijuana and tax revenues associated with its sale will likely drop further in the future. All right, so let me kick this off. Normally, I like hand it back to you guys, and then I come in over the top and add my little 2 cents. But I'm just going to start this by adding my 2 cents right out of the gate. So I did not like this author's take on things because I felt that there were some major fallacies in the approach that Bu-Young Sao took in this article. The first was the idea that there are harms in adolescence, and that as a result of that, cannabis should be categorized in that same sin tax category. And this author included a hyperlink to the research which they used to support that. Very scholarly. Thank you very much. So I clicked on that hyperlink and I read that article, and I couldn't find the supporting information from that article, which was written 10 years ago by two people who do not reside in the United States. And so anything that's an age-restricted product that's used by youth is going to create harms. But that didn't seem to be the same line of rationale for why there are societal costs for tobacco use and alcohol use. So that didn't make sense for me. The next thing that didn't make sense for me is if this author is talking about the reduction in taxes from alcohol and tobacco as state legal cannabis programs are rolled out, is there not an argument that the impacts of cannabis use have a cost savings on those states because they have less societal or externality costs related to those communities using alcohol and tobacco? Didn't touch on that. The other thing that I thought was painful was there wasn't enough talking about the unregulated market and the impact that has, because when you talk about price compression in regulated markets, it doesn't really take into account that there's already an existing unregulated market. And then the last thing that I didn't like about this article was the idea that the high taxes have been a reason why we have had less participation in the regulated market and haven't been able to really wrap our arms around a lot of the unregulated operators in mature states. And so when those unregulated operators in mature states are paying zero taxes, if the goal is to wrap our arms around them and allow them to participate in a way that is affordable and safer and less stressful than working in the shadows, by reducing the sales tax as a percentage, you can actually grow your market. And so I felt like those were things that would have been welcomed inclusions from an article authored by somebody who has a PhD. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News. I'd like to know what my other panelists think.
Well. I mean, I do agree with you, Yarrow, that he's using a whole bunch of prohibitionist rhetoric and reefer madness kind of talking points to try to demonstrate his point. And just like you said, like when you go to the studies, there's no real merit there. And anytime that you're going to tax cannabis based off of potency, all you're going to be doing is driving people to other markets. So then that way they don't have to pay those subsequent taxes.
You hit it on the head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what Nick is actually saying. He's like gas excise taxes are set based on the quantity sold and has nothing to do with the pricing of the grade of gasoline purchased. So I wonder if that's kind of like the better model for excising with excise taxing on cannabis. What do you think, Yarrow?
I think it's less model dependent and more percentage dependent. When we are reading an article and I have to use the word 37%,
that's high.
We all know that if that was 3.7%, we wouldn't even be covering this. And so separate from the model, the percentages are egregious. And those percentages of taxes are one of the three pillars of why we have a less robust, functional, regulated market in states that have programs. The other reason is a lack of retail, Mr. Cornhole. And so, and then the third reason, obviously, is the cost of doing business and the lengthy times that it takes to get these entitlements and actually finally get a going concern up and operating. And so this notion that we are discussing tax structure instead of tax percentages fundamentally misses the mark. And so the key here to me is, what's that expression? Pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered. The government's tax structure is hog-like. And whether it's based on potency, volume, excise, it doesn't matter. When you're at 37%, you are bleeding people dry. And that's why the unregulated market, along with the quality, continues to thrive, in my opinion.
Anything else you got to say on this, Mathieu St. Germain?
I'm staying with line this one out. Right?
All right, fair enough.
E2 is about it. Although I would just say it's ridiculous. California has a structure that every time the government doesn't make its tax benchmark that it projects for a quarter, it then is the excise tax rate. So we're in this like treadmill effect in California where there's no way to ever reach the finish line, because every quarter the tax rate goes up again.
Yeah.
I just think that Gavin Newsom and his friends have structured at least the California market in such a way. They want those folks. They want the folks at the top of the hill in San Francisco. They want the folks at Gavin's club there in Napa. Those are the folks they want in the cannabis market, and they're structuring it so that if you don't have generational wealth, really compete.
Yep. Very, very true. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial, and we're going to be right back.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
Yeah, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you hit that like button. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you've not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com.
I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
Hi, I'm Smoky Vanilla. I have my bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on individuals that are in sport with chronic pain or injury. I love to intuitively create and customize a session based on the individual that I'm working with. We'll go over a few postural assessments, work together to create a wellness journey based on the health history, past injuries, or anything still affecting you today. And we'll get you back on your feet right away with less pain.
We're about to stretch, and then we're gonna smoke, because we're gonna get on our stretch and smoke. If you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to come on down and get a stretch and smoke with none other than Smoky Vanilla.
Yes, coming up next, we have the immortal one. The immortal year over here, Mr. Mathieu St. Germain. He's been walking the earth for thousands upon thousands of years, and he's here to bless us with some interesting news today. That's right, it is none other than the Count himself, Mr. Mathieu St. Germain.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody out there. I've got an interesting story to share today from the psychedelic world. Companies are looking to offer psychedelic drug therapy coverage for employees. A growing number of companies are exploring the possibility of offering psychedelic drug therapy for their employees as a cost-saving, effective means of mental health treatment, according to a report. Recent research has shown that well-known psychedelics like MDMA, psilocybin, ketamine, which has been legalized for medicinal use, are all useful alternatives to treating a slew of mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Jorge Yant, founder of Plexus Healthcare System, told the Wall Street Journal that he has started offering psychedelic-assisted therapy coverage to his employees. And what he said is he's experimented with them himself, and he could see how it could be helpful. The businessman said he first began to consider covering psychedelic therapies after an anonymous summary report of prescription drug use at the company revealed how many on his staff were being prescribed medications for health. Use of antidepressants among my employees and their families was off the charts, he said. And said he believes the U.S. healthcare system overly emphasizes prescription drugs and his workers could benefit from the therapy. It will save money over time compared to extensive traditional therapy sessions and will make his employees happier and more productive, he told the Journal. The company said if MDMA is approved by the Food and Drugs list, this is Enthea, a company that does ketamine-assisted therapy, is saying that they're waiting for MDMA to be rolled out, and they're going to start doing that too at $15,000 a pop. Barry Reyes, Enthea's CEO, said just this past year, more than a dozen companies signed up for therapy coverage and another 50 have signed letters of intent. Psychedelic therapy is increasingly viewed as a legitimate treatment for mental health as it becomes more and more mainstream, especially among elites in Silicon Valley and Wall Street. Elon Musk, among the wealthiest individuals in the world, has been candid about his ketamine use for health reasons, going as far to say of his use of the drug, it is beneficial to his investors, and he said the drugs help him manage a negative chemical state from being a fascist capitalist. He did an interview with Don Lemon last month. Google co-founder Sergey Brin said he's used psilocybin while the late Steve Jobs was a vocal advocate of LSD. Billionaire Peter Thiel dumped millions into a Thai Life Science, a firm that uses hallucinogens in medicine, and last year, its owner Steve Cohen donated $5 million to MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. This thing goes on, but I'm already kind of just at the end of my wits with this. Now, this is definitely a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Psychedelics are great for therapy. They're great for trauma, PTSD, trauma relief, and help one reorganize their own life. I want to call out Peter Thiel. Thai Life Sciences isn't trying to make psychedelics or hallucinogens. They're trying to make non-psychedelic analogs of psychedelic compounds that they patent and some sort of benefit off without giving people the actual self-reflection, self-improvement, and nature that psychedelics actually provide. And what a lot of this is doing, and though I do support MAPS and I do support psychedelic therapy because people have trauma and I think people need help, what we're finding is instead of this therapy being aimed at homeless and drug users and recidivist criminals and politicians, people who really need it, it's being aimed in this Brave New World fashion at workers. They're trying to me, it feels like they're trying to craft a soma. If you're not familiar with the book, Soma was a drug that kind of sounded like a mixture of MDMA and LSD that basically let everybody blow steam off on the weekends, didn't cause any real deep introspection, and was a social lubricant that allowed the workforce to be basically good wage slaves. I think that this article points to something that we all need to really have our hand on the brake on and area of, which is not allowing psychedelics to become another tool in the fascist capitalist toolbox as hierarchy, as structuring ability to allow people to have their freedom. What psychedelics are actually for are for us to take, listen, down inside of us that is the heart of wild nature that is calling us to reconnect with each other, live a fairer, more compassionate, more equitable life along arm in arm with our friends, little squirrels and the rabbits and the deer, the hawks and the oak trees, and each other. And so to get down off my soapbox here and hand this over to Yarrow and Jason for a little bit more of a media reality perspective. Mm-hmm. But I am excited to hear and interested to hear what you guys have to say. So take it away, guys.
You know, I really like what Eddie Funksta has to say in the chat in regards to this. He says, people that haven't taken psychedelics really have a lot to say about them these days. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very, very interesting, especially what you said, Matthew, about Peter Thiel and what he's trying to do within the psychedelic space, and that makes a lot more sense once it's broken down like that. And I feel like there's a lot more organizations that are on that same page, and a lot of these pharmaceutical companies, and one of the reasons that they're wanting to do a similar path as well, so then that way they can patent it and monetize it.
You know what I like is that 50 years later, we're finally realizing that our hippie parents were right, and that going to a concert and tuning in, dropping out, taking a little bit of this, that, whatever, that there was not just recreation and celebration that these people were achieving, but that there was therapeutic benefit, and that this generation before us, the flower children, were ahead of the curve in deeply understanding the healing opportunities that can come with taking some time to be in an alternative mindset. The challenge that comes up for me is that a lot of the companies that are coming into this space are going to need to spend some money to do it. And I'm really worried about the barrier to entry for accessing these modalities as they work their way into sort of the mainstream market or the populations. And this idea that some of these places are very expensive, very bougie. I'm concerned that they're not going to cross cultural, socioeconomic, and racial boundaries in terms of fair access or subsidized opportunities for everybody to enjoy some of this. And then the other thing that was interesting to me about this article is that it quoted this business owner, and it said that he said, quote, "The use of antidepressants among my employees and their families was off the chart." Well, medical information is confidential. So how does he know that about his employees?
It was a self-reported study. It was a self-reported study. Sorry to interrupt. It was an anonymous self-reported study.
Okay. Well, he said that he was offering George Yant, founder of Plexus Healthcare Systems, that he was offering psychedelic-assisted therapy coverage for his employees. And then he, who I'm not sure that he was the study versus just this company, said that this use was off the chart. And so I think it's important that as we explore sort of mainstreaming and normalizing and Western medicizing these types of treatments, that we're also very mindful of the right for all patients to have confidentiality when it comes to the choices they use for wellness, mental health, and their other treatments.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Yarrow, and I would say when diving into that study, I think the most disturbing thing about that is when he says that off the charts, all of his employees and family members. This is something that's reflected in the United States at large, and it's time for us to once again sit down and get into self-reflection and realize, like, if this stuff is off the charts, why is everybody on antidepressants? Because everyone's depressed because the model is not working. And I know I hammer on this every show, but here we go again. The model's not working, and so people are just shoveling prescription drugs into their mouths in order to try to make this model work. That's the thing that scares me is people then just trying to shove ecstasy down people's throats so that they can continue to swallow this model that's not working. And I'd like to really caution. So there's a book called The Immortality Key. It's about the use of the kykeon, which is a beverage that contains a natural version of LSD, lysergic acid amide, that was used in the rituals of Eleusis in Greece. Now, the reason I point this out is the Greeks had a wealth of academic knowledge, mostly learned actually from the ancient Egyptians in Kemet. And they had the tie to this substance, and every Greek citizen had to do it at least once in their life. Now, you think that's amazing. It's great. They did have a beautiful society that built a lot of amazing megaliths. At the same time, they still had slaves. And so what this shows me is that psychedelics are never the cure in and of themselves. Psychedelics are a tool and an amplifier that will allow you to be a more fuller version of yourself. Therefore, if you are a capitalist fascist scumbag like Peter Thiel, it's just going to make you more so. Same thing with Elon Musk. It's just going to make you more so. It's not going to actually heal you. It may let a crack in. It may let the light in, but you have to see that crack. You have to see that light, and you have to work, spread, and open that. The work that is done with psychedelics is the work that is done every day, ordering one's life, aging one's life with discipline and willpower, growing one's compassion, understanding that we are all connected, and trying to think about how one's actions affect and influence other people for committing those actions. To live in a conscious state, and not a reactive state. What do you think, Jason?
I'm wondering about what Nick Bradley is saying. He's asking that when they started these studies, didn't suicide rates start to skyrocket at that point?
From SSRI antidepressants, yes. Suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation are known side effects of SSRIs.
Interesting.
And there's a big thing where nobody wants to talk about the fact that nearly every school shooter has been on SSRIs. Now, is that just a correlation because so many children now are being fed these SSRIs, or is there a direct causation? I know people who are on SSRIs who have never harmed or killed themselves. And at the same time, these are well-known described side effects of these medications.
Fair enough.
It's interesting because I think, we are as a society are starting to appreciate mental health a lot more. And so part of that is also a driver for a proliferation of these prescriptions being written over the last couple decades. It's also the thing that comes up for me is like MDMA has been studied for couples counseling going back to the early 2000s. I mean, we've got decades where some of these substances have been considered for their therapeutic benefit. And then the other thing that comes up for me is like, I hate to say this because I don't want to bash on our country, but Americans are in many respects pretty friggin' lazy. And they always want a pill or the hack or the shortcut. And like when I listen to Mathieu speak, like Mathieu is Mathieu because he's done work, because he has fed his brain, because he has fed his heart. And to his point around how taking psychedelics can be a petri dish for someone's personality, it could be an amplifier, but maybe not something that completely shifts who somebody is. I think that we need to also think about wellness through this lens that there may never be something external to us that is a substitute for doing work, for putting effort into a conscious journey to try to improve and level up in all ways. And that whether that practice is through religion, meditation, exercise, diet, some combination of trying to improve ourselves, at the end of the day, there's no substitute for putting in the work. And when I listen to Mathieu St. Germain speak, besides the fact that he's handsome and intelligent and knows what he's talking about, I see the byproduct of someone who has clearly put time and effort into evolving to their best self today. And I think our viewership and this country needs to understand that there is no shortcut to self-improvement. There may be tools, but if you don't want to be a tool, you're going to have to look at yourself and do some of that digging, uncover some of those issues, heal those traumas, and really try to go out into society and be the best version of yourself that you can.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial and we're going to be right back. Get ready for the return of the shit show to Los Angeles, returning Friday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. to midnight at a brand new venue. Comedy sets by comedians such as Demi York, Lindsay Ames, Alyssa Phillips, Chris Thayer, Josh Shakespeare, Fumi Avi, Jay Snow, Brent Weinbach, Chris Kelly, and hosted by none other than Abdullah Saeed. So head over to www.cloudmedia.partners now to get your tickets, and we'll see you there. All right, and we're back, you guys. All right, we got two more stories coming out for you today. Are you guys ready for this? Yarrow, I think they're coming for your computer, bro. Just so you know.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Because the Justice Department is investigating marijuana-related businesses over their COVID relief loans, the industry source says, you guys. That's right.
Oh.
The Justice Department is investigating marijuana-related businesses that allegedly took coronavirus relief loans in violation of federal rules, with third-party actors leveraging a whistleblower policy that allows them to take a portion of settlement money if they report on the cannabis companies. Multiple sources in the cannabis legal space confirmed the trend with Marijuana Moment this week, though they declined to identify active clients involved in the litigation. This evidentially involves both direct cannabis businesses that are involved in the production or sale of marijuana, as well as ancillary companies that are not plant touching. One public case that DOJ disclosed last month involved a holding company for the Bob Marley namesake cannabis company, Marley Natural, a company that specializes in facilitating Oh wait, sorry. I don't think this that sentence is supposed to go there, so I apologize. A company that specializes in facilitating whistleblower complaints for allegedly Paycheck Protection Program (PPP) violations, Sideslove, successfully reported that the cannabis business Docklight brands to the DOJ for receiving the funds in contravention of Federal Small Business Administration policy prohibiting companies from taking the loans if they work with the cannabis companies indirectly and service the industry, in quotes. Because federal law prohibits the distribution and sale of marijuana, financial transactions involving a marijuana-related business would generally involve funds derived from illegal activity, SBA said back in 2020. In another quote, therefore, businesses that derive revenue from marijuana-related activities or that support the end use of marijuana may be ineligible for SBA financial assistance. Sources who requested anonymity say there are up to 100 active cases, with the Justice Department sending letters notifying businesses they are directly or indirectly associated with the state legal marijuana industry, and they are being reviewed for possible violations under the False Claims Act, the FCA. Under DOJ policy, individuals who report on PPP loan violations under FCA may be entitled to 15% of the proceeds from any settlement agreement. In the Sideslove Docklight case, that was submitted to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Washington. That meant Sideslove will receive $148,416 of the settlement funds, DOJ said in a press release last month. In quotes, those seeking vital assistance from SBA's pandemic response programs must comply with the requirements, SBA OIG's Western Region Special Agent in Charge, Weston King, said, aiding that the settlement sends a strong message of accountability. But the situation is more widespread. Industry insiders and legal experts familiar with the trend say, and notably, it is affecting companies that are not specifically involved in the production or distribution of cannabis itself. Any business that took PPP loans that works with the state legal marijuana market, accountants, consultants, could be impacted. To be clear, it doesn't seem the DOJ is proactively investigating these cases. A source in one federal prosecutor's office told Marijuana Moment that they are aware that marijuana-related businesses seem to be uniquely targeted by third-party realtors who could be using public databases to identify loan recipients who are adjacently involved in the cannabis sectors in order to receive that 15% payout. And the Docklight case is a rare example of a FCA settlement related to marijuana that's been made public, and sources say this trend is relatively new and legal documents are generally sealed until the cases are finalized, which could take months or even years. But as the Justice Department ramps up its efforts to reclaim fraudulent PPP loan distributions, the cannabis industry is apparently in the sights of companies hoping to cash in on possible settlement agreements they initiate. In quotes, we looked at a number of different theories about how to litigate under the SBA rules. Jason Marcus, a partner at Brackner and Marcus LLC that represented Sideslove, told Marijuana Moment, and one of the theories that came pretty early was marijuana companies, so Docklight was really kind of our test case. In quotes, we did our research, he said. We found where the SBA said this is not allowed. Whether you're a direct or indirect marijuana related business, you're not supposed to be receiving PPP funds. Marcus said that his sense of the scope of potential liability among ancillary cannabis businesses is pretty huge, frankly, and there are some more obvious examples of federal violations, such as cannabis dispensaries receiving the funds, but the SBA policy itself is broad enough to cover virtually anyone who received the loans and who derived some income from cannabis businesses. He advised that any direct or indirect cannabis business that may be impacted to self-report to the DOJ to potentially avoid multiplied penalties. But the blood is in the water, and Marcus suspects his firm's successful litigation and DOJ's public disclosure of the case could be influencing other PPP data miners to follow suit. They say, in quotes, "It's unusual to have outside parties report businesses over alleged FCA violations," he said. "Not unheard of, but it's unusual. The difference here is that there are public databases of PPP loan recipients available to potential litigants interested in assisting DOJ and possibly winning a 15% settlement cut. And cannabis-adjacent businesses are relatively low-hanging fruit, and the exact number of cannabis businesses that DOJ is investigating or prosecuting is unclear, but numerous sources confirmed at least one detail, that it is a recent surge in letters from federal prosecutors to cannabis-related businesses about active investigations related to the PPP loans." And Aaron Smith, executive director of the NCIA, told Marijuana Moment he's heard of a handful of ancillary business members that have been contracted by the DOJ about their PPP loan, and these businesses do not handle cannabis directly nor violate any state or federal laws and should absolutely have access to the Paycheck Protection Program just as any other legal business, he said. And Hillary Bricken, a partner at the firm Hirsch and Blackwell, told Marijuana Moment that this could set off a domino effect of reporting ancillary companies to the feds, where the majority or all of the revenue is derived from the cannabis industry. She added that it is another technical nightmare caused by the Schedule I status of cannabis under the Controlled Substances Act, and the Justice Department and offices of the individual U.S. attorneys did not respond to multiple requests for comment. And as Bricken noted, the issue at hand underscores yet another policy complication resulting from the federal-state marijuana disconnect. And at some time, the Drug Enforcement Administration under the DOJ is exploring whether to reschedule. Yeah, we all know that, you guys. So, man, what do you think about this? They're coming. They're coming for all the weed companies, you guys, apparently. If you got a PPP loan, they may be coming after you. And then they're telling you to just snitch on yourself ahead of time, so then that way they don't have to have someone else snitch on you. What do you think about this?
It's horrible. I mean, they're just literally asking everybody to turn in their neighbors.
Right?
It's the worst possible tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I love the theory that there is whistleblower protection, but they are literally creating a financial structure for snitching such that it has spawned a business. Because when I go on the internet and look for SideSolve is a company that is solely focused on PPE fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And so this company is in existence to benefit from those finder's fees. And I think we're balancing fiscal accountability for government funded programs where ultimately that is taxpayer money versus this notion that, first of all, why should our industry be singled out? Are there technicalities that make it harder for our industry versus others? That's not entirely equitable. But let's not forget, PPE money got spent into the economy. PPP was an economic stimulus program, just like the TARP program. And so the companies that received that money typically spent it with ancillary companies, suppliers, consultants. When money is circulated in the economy widely, there tends to be a lot of beneficiaries of those structures.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know why they're quoting Bricken. I know she likes to talk, and I don't know why they're quoting Aaron of NCIA, because this doesn't seem to be a systemic industry issue. What it seems like is an ambulance-chasing law firm has another company that is in business to report across the medical device industry or medical industry, and that because cannabis was deemed essential, it's getting pulled into a broader structure where this company is out there trying to earn money. And look, I want to be very, very conservative with the way in which taxpayer funds are used. But when the government is handing out money, like Oprah Winfrey hands out keys for cars at a special taping of her show, the idea is that some milk is going to fall on the barnyard floor. There will always be some percentage of funds or bad apples, bad actors who didn't use money in the way it was intended. But if the net effect of that program was to stabilize or prop up the economy, I'm not mad at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find this. I agree with you. This is kind of an ambulance chasing type of firm, but I wonder how hard they're going to go. And I'm really surprised that they're going to collect like just under $150,000 from this one case. I mean that's a pretty penny. Like that's not money to just, you know what I'm saying, just chum around about.
I would rather eat out of a dumpster than make my money that way.
That's fair. It's a very fair point. I know a lot of people that feel that exact same way too. I'm not mad at that, but you know, $150,000 is a lot of money to a lot of people, and a lot of people are starving and doing pretty bad right now. So I only imagine that this thing is going to get worse, and there's going to get more steam, and it's going to bog down a lot of court systems and whatnot going forward, because there are a lot of people that are pretty cutthroat in this space, I would say. Fair enough. All right.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, I'm going to end this for you guys on some good news. Unless you have something to say, Mathieu St. Germain. I see you looking up.
I have to jump.
Oh, you have to jump. Hey, well, you have an amazing day today.
I'm being called by the Grand Gnomes of Zurich are calling me to a meeting.
No problem. We'll see you soon, my friend. But one last...
I love you guys.
Love you too, bro. Be safe.
Okay, Jay.
All right. Marijuana legalization reduces the likelihood of teen use. A study published by the American Medical Association finds, Yarrow. A new report published by the American Medical Association, the AMA, finds that neither adult use marijuana legalization nor the opening of retail stores in the U.S. States have led to increases in youth cannabis use. Rather, the reforms were generally associated with more young people reporting not using marijuana, along with increases in those who say they don't use alcohol or vape products either. The results of the study, published on Monday in the medical group's journal, the JAMA Pediatrics, reinforce previous findings that legalizing and regulating marijuana for adults typically does not increase youth use of the substance, contrary to what opponents of the policy change often argue. The study drew data from in 47 states, looking at responses from 898,271 teens. In quotes, with parent consent, authors explained students from the 9th to the 12th grade self-reported prior month use of cannabis, alcohol, cigarettes, and e-cigarettes. Passage of recreational cannabis laws, better known as RCLs, was not associated with adolescents' likelihood or frequency of cannabis use, the analysis found, and although negative total effect estimates indicated significantly lowered use following RCL, nor were increases associated with the launch of adult use sales, better known as RCRs. The study was authored by a 5-person team from Boston College and the University of Maryland at College Park, and to their knowledge, they wrote, "This study is the first to evaluate associations between RCL and RCR policies and adolescent substance use through 2021. Results the study concludes suggest that legalization and greater control over cannabis markets have not facilitated adolescents' entry into substance use, and over time, it seems adult use marijuana laws led to lower odds of any cannabinoid use. Each additional year of RCL, the study says, was associated with an 8% higher odds of zero cannabis use, lower likelihood of any use with non-significant total estimates, they say. The opening of retail markets, meanwhile, was associated with a 28% higher odds of zero cannabis use, with each additional year of the RCR exposure associated with 8% higher odds of zero cannabis use. Considering other substances, RCL showed a negative total effect estimate for alcohol use. The study continues, while no significant results emerged for cigarettes. As for vaping, it continues. Each additional year adult use marijuana legalization laws being in place was associated with a 16% increased odds of zero e-cigarette use, with a negative total effect estimate, and a regulated retail cannabis market, meanwhile, was associated with 42% increased odds of zero e-cigarette use, with each additional year of RCR associated with 20% increased odds of zero use, both showing significant negative total effect estimates. From a youth health perspective, not all of the study's findings are positive. One outcome associated with the launch of retail stores was that youth who already used marijuana did so more frequently after the market opened, and specifically, the change was associated with a 26% higher frequency of use among users, combining to a non-significant total effect estimate. When considered along with the increased likelihood of zero cannabis use, each additional year of retail markets being open was associated with a 8% higher frequency use with non-significant total effect estimate. Using the most recently available 2011 through 2021 data, we found limited associations between RCL and RCR with adolescent substance use. Extending previous findings, the report says RCL was associated with modest decreases in cannabis, alcohol, and e-cigarette use, and RCR was associated with lower e-cigarette use and lower likelihood, but also increased frequency of cannabis use among users, leading to no overall change in cannabis use. The team's report concludes that given the negative health consequences associated with early and heavy use of the substances and results suggesting users of cannabis may be increasing their frequency of use response to retail availability, greater attention is warranted to sources and trajectories among frequent youth users of cannabis. The subject of the youth has been a contentious topic as more states consider legalizing marijuana, with opponents and supporters of the reform often disagreeing on how to interpret results of various studies, especially in light of sometimes mixed results in the latest JAMA paper and others. Recently released data from a Washington state survey of adolescent and teen students found overall declines in both lifetime and past 30-day marijuana use since legalization, with striking drops in recent years that held steady through 2023, and the results also indicate that perceived ease of access to cannabis among underage students has generally fallen since the state enacted legalization for adults in 2012. A separate study late last year also found that Canadian high school students reported it was difficult to access marijuana since the government legalized the drug nationwide in 2019, and the prevalence of the current cannabis use also fell during the study period from 12.7% in 2018-2019 to 7.5% in 2020-21, even as retail sales of marijuana expanded across the country. And in December, meanwhile, a U.S. health official said that teen marijuana use has increased even as state legalization has proliferated across the country, and in quotes, "There has been no substantial increases at all," said Marcia Lopez, chief of the National Institute of Drug Abuse, NIDA's epidemiological research branch. She says, in fact, they have not reported an increase in perceived availability either, which is kind of interesting. Another earlier analysis from the CDC found that rates of current and lifetime cannabis use among high school students have continued to drop amid the legalization movement, and a study of high school students in Massachusetts was published last November found that youth in the state were no more likely to use marijuana after legalization, though more students perceived their parents as cannabis consumers after the policy change. And finally, a separate NIDA-funded study published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine in 2022 also found that state-level cannabis legalization was not associated with increased youth use, and the study demonstrated that youth who spent more of their adolescence under legalization with no more or less likely to have used cannabis at the age of 15 years than adolescents who spent little or no time under legalization. Yet another 2022 study from Michigan State University researchers published in the journal PLOS One found that the cannabis retail sales might be followed by the increased occurrence of cannabis onsets for older adults in legal states, but not for underage persons who currently cannot buy cannabis products in a retail outlet. The trends were observed despite adult use marijuana and certain psychedelics reaching historic heights in 2022, according to separate data released last year. Well, Yarrow, I know you love some good data, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this, because I think this is some good news overall.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been biting my tongue waiting for you to go through that alphabet soup of statistics.
Sorry
and for any of our visual or kinesthetic learners, I invite you to go read the article, because trying to track all those statistics through Jason's covering of the article or reading of the article isn't going to be the best way for you to actually absorb that information. I actually almost wanted to put the link to the article in the YouTube chat just so that people had quick reference. But luckily, High at 9 News, the website will have that information, yada, yada, yada. Here's what's really painful for me. The article that I covered today around tax policy fails to acknowledge the data in this article, which is that adult use markets and the reduction to teenage cannabis use as a result is actually a public health benefit. And so when they sit there and they have cannabis be a part of these sin taxes, but they're not taking into account the data here, which is coming from very mainstream, nonpartisan sources, National Institute of Health, National Institute of Addiction and Disease. I mean, these are not necessarily organizations that have a particular ideological agenda. And what they're saying is when something becomes accessible and not illicit, not cool, and not revolutionary, and not a rebellious act, us adults have taken the cool out of it for kids. I think the use of cannabis by developing minds is a harm that, for the most part, the industry understates. And I think that this article shows that by making cannabis safe, accessible, affordable, and normalizing it, we actually help to solve that issue. And so, I think of the cornhole guy who doesn't want to see any more retail in New York. Well, obviously you don't care about young kids then. And I think about that the tax economist who wrote that article who talked about sin taxes and the impact on youth. Well, obviously you don't care about kids, because if you're not pro-retail, if you're not pro-proliferation of cannabis accessibility, then you're actually flying in the face of this public health data that's being articulated in the article you just covered.
Yep. I agree with that. I agree with all of that, Yarrow. And at the end of the day, I really just wanted to end on some good news, because I think overall this is fantastic news. And what I really want to know too is I want to know what Project Sam has to say, what their rebuttal would be in regards with all these studies.
They don't have one. They don't, because data and facts and studies that don't support a bias tend to create a stammering seal situation. Because what are they going to say? I mean, this is showing that when we make this normalized, the risks go down to the most important constituents.
Agreed. It takes the cool out of it. And it takes the whole breaking the law. And I really, did you just quote Judas Priest? I love it. So that was a good song. Yeah. What I really liked is that the study didn't just poll these kids for cannabis, but also tobacco, also e-cigarettes, a variety of age-restricted products that these kids are getting their hands on. And I thought that was a broader, more comprehensive approach to creating this information. I agree, and I wasn't surprised at the part of them they said that the kids that did use cannabis that their use went up, because in essence you have more availability, and so I wasn't too surprised by that, but I was really glad to see that overall that the use in youth was down, and they weren't like, oh yeah, like they weren't basically doing what the Reefer Madness critics all say that is going to happen. And so
flies in the face of every NIMBY who doesn't want to see retail in their town.
Exactly.
This just flies right in the face of that.
I agree with you 100% on that, Yarrow. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big thank you to our audience and supporters for tuning in and listening to the daily insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Thank you to all of our sponsors tuning in, helping us keep the lights on. And thank you, Yarrow, coming in, Mathieu St, Germain, Rico, you know what I'm saying? Good little Monday crew. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.